On the distant planet of Zarathia, where twin suns painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, a peculiar bond was about to unfold. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy as Queen Zyra of the Xylari race stood atop her obsidian throne, her towering form casting long shadows across the crystalline chamber. Her segmented exoskeleton gleamed like polished silver under the dim light of bioluminescent orbs that floated lazily around her. Far below the royal spires, nestled amidst fields of luminescent crops that pulsed softly in rhythm with the planet's magnetic field, lived Arlen Thorne, a farmer whose weathered face told stories of countless harvests beneath Zarathia's unforgiving skies. His modest dwelling, constructed from native stone and reinforced with salvaged materials from ancient spacecraft, stood as a testament to his resilience against both nature and time. Queen Zyra's heart had been heavy for cycles uncounted since the disappearance of her youngest offspring, Prince Kalian. The young prince, barely having reached his first metamorphosis, had vanished during a routine exploration mission near the human settlements. Despite dispatching countless search parties and utilizing the most advanced tracking technologies available to the Xylari, no trace of the youngling had been found, that is, until today. Through her telepathic connection with her subjects, Queen Zyra received a vision that shook her to her core. One of her scouts had witnessed something extraordinary, a human farmer cradling what appeared to be a small Xylari child in his arms. The image burned itself into her consciousness, the impossible sight of her lost son wrapped in a crude blanket made from alien fibers, sleeping peacefully in the embrace of this primitive being. Arlen Thorne had discovered the mysterious creature 3 moon cycles ago, when a sudden ion storm had forced him to seek shelter in one of his storage silos. There, nestled among the harvested glow pods, he found the injured being that looked like nothing he'd ever encountered before. Its chitinous skin reflected the faint light like liquid mercury, and its delicate limbs twitched feebly as it struggled to breathe. Against all logic and self-preservation, Arlen had taken the creature into his home, tending to its wounds with whatever medical supplies he could scavenge or create. The Queen's reaction to the news was a tempest of emotions that rippled through the hive mind of her people. Rage warred with relief, suspicion battled gratitude, and above all, an overwhelming maternal instinct surged through her being. How dare this primitive human touch what was hers? Yet how could she deny the evidence that this simple farmer had saved her child when her own kind had failed? As Queen Zyra prepared to descend from her celestial fortress to confront the human who held her son's fate in his calloused hands, she couldn't help but marvel at the irony of the situation. For centuries, her people had viewed humans as little more than pests, primitive creatures who had crash-landed on their planet generations ago and refused to perish. Now, one of these very beings held the key to her family's restoration. The journey from the crystalline spires to Arlen's humble farmstead seemed to stretch eternity for Queen Zyra. Each step of her procession sent tremors through the ground, causing nearby crops to shiver and emit warning pulses of light. Her entourage of warrior drones moved with mechanical precision, their armored forms glinting menacingly in the twin suns' light. Yet beneath her regal exterior, the Queen felt an unfamiliar flutter of uncertainty. Arlen Thorne watched the approaching procession with a mixture of awe and terror. His initial thought upon discovering the injured creature had been practical. Perhaps it was valuable, maybe even worth trading for better farming equipment. But as days turned into weeks, his motivations shifted. The being's occasional chirps and clicks became a language he somehow understood, and its large, multifaceted eyes seemed to hold an intelligence far beyond anything he'd imagined. When the massive procession finally reached his farm, Arlen stood defiantly in front of his dwelling, the now-healed creature clinging to his shoulder with surprising strength. Queen Zyra's arrival was nothing short of spectacular. The air crackled with energy as she approached, her presence commanding respect even from the very soil beneath their feet. "Human," the Queen's voice resonated through Arlen's mind rather than his ears. "You have something that belongs to me." Her words carried weight, each syllable pressing against his consciousness like a physical force. Arlen swallowed hard, adjusting his grip on his walking stick. "I found him hurt, Your Majesty," he replied, choosing honesty over diplomacy. "He would have died if I hadn't helped him." The Queen's antennae twitched in surprise at the human's direct response. Most creatures quaked in fear when addressed by the Xylari ruler, but this farmer stood his ground. She studied the scene before her. The crude but effective bandages still visible on her son's limbs, the way he nestled trustingly against the human's neck, and the protective stance of the farmer himself. "You have saved my son," Queen Zyra acknowledged, her mental voice softening slightly. "But do you understand what you have done?" Do you comprehend the implications of harboring a Xylari royal? Arlen chuckled nervously, scratching at his salt and pepper beard. Well, ma'am, I figured keeping him alive was probably better than letting him die. Figured wrong, did I? The Queen's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement or irritation. It was difficult to tell. You are either exceptionally brave or exceptionally foolish, she observed. Perhaps both. My people have spent cycles searching for Kalian, yet it was you, a mere human, who found and healed him. The young prince chose that moment to release a series of excited clicks and whistles, reaching out toward his mother while still maintaining a firm grip on Arlen's shirt. The display of affection between the two species created an awkward silence that stretched uncomfortably long. I don't suppose you'd care to explain why your search parties never thought to look in a simple farmer's storage silo? Arlen asked, his curiosity overriding his fear. Seems like a pretty basic place to start looking. Queen Zyra's response was interrupted by a sudden commotion as several of her warrior drones began scanning the surrounding area. Their weapon systems activated with an ominous hum, targeting various structures on Arlen's property. The farmer's old scarecrow, designed to keep away crop-eating creatures, proved particularly fascinating to the Xylari technology. Stand down! The Queen commanded sharply, causing the warriors to hesitate. We are not here to destroy this human's home. At least, not yet. The tension between them thickened as understanding dawned on Arlen's face. Ah, he said slowly. This is where you take him back and probably erase my memory or something, right? That's usually how these things go in the stories. To his surprise, Queen Zyra actually laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a storm. Your species never ceases to amaze me with its assumptions. No, human, we do not erase memories. We simply encourage certain perspectives. However, given the circumstances, perhaps tradition must bend. The standoff continued as both parties assessed each other. Queen Zyra noted the calluses on Arlen's hands, evidence of years of hard labor, and the genuine affection in his eyes when he looked at her son. Arlen, in turn, observed the subtle signs of exhaustion in the Queen's posture and the desperate hope hidden behind her regal facade. Well then, Arlen said finally, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. What exactly are you proposing we do about this situation? Because I gotta say, your boy here has grown on me. Literally, he sheds everywhere. The Queen's response came as a complete surprise. Perhaps there is room for negotiation. After all, you seem to have developed a unique understanding of my son's needs. And he appears to have formed an attachment to you. As Queen Zyra and Arlen stood facing each other, neither willing to fully concede ground, a new complication emerged from the skies above. A squadron of sleek, black ships descended rapidly, their markings clearly identifying them as belonging to the Krallian Empire, an aggressive neighboring species known for their expansionist tendencies and complete disregard for diplomatic niceties. By the twin suns, Queen Zyra muttered under her breath, her antennae flattening against her skull in a display of rare agitation. This cannot be mere coincidence. The lead Krallian vessel landed with military precision a safe distance from both the Queen's procession and Arlen's farm, kicking up clouds of iridescent dust that swirled ominously in the air. From the craft emerged Commander Vortak, his scaled armor glinting menacingly in the sunlight. Unlike the Xylari's graceful insectoid forms, the Krallians resembled bipedal reptiles, their slit-pupil eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. Greetings, Queen Zyra, Vortak's voice rasped through a translator device, each word dripping with false courtesy. We received reports of unusual activity in this sector. Imagine our surprise to find you consorting with primitive humans. Arlen felt the young prince tighten his grip on his shoulder, emitting a series of distressed clicks that set every hair on the farmer's body on end. Queen Zyra's warriors immediately formed a protective circle around their monarch and the human farmer duo, their weapons humming with contained energy. This matter does not concern you, Vortak, the Queen declared, her mental voice carrying a steel edge that made even Arlen's bones vibrate. Return to your territory before you incur the wrath of the Xylari hive. The Krallian commander chuckled, a sound like grinding stones. Ah, but it does concern us. You see, we detected an unauthorized use of advanced healing technology in this exact location. His tongue flicked out, tasting the air. technology that bears striking similarities to designs stolen from our research facilities. Arlen's stomach dropped as realization dawned. The sophisticated medical kit he'd scavenged months ago from a crashed ship, the same one he'd used to save the young prince, hadn't been abandoned xylery tech as he'd assumed. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The increased Crawleyan patrols in recent weeks, the strange energy readings that had fried some of his equipment, and now this unexpected confrontation. "Your Highness," Arlen whispered urgently, "about that medical kit I used." Queen Zyra's gaze snapped to him, her compound eyes narrowing dangerously. "You utilized Crawleyan technology? Without proper authorization or safety protocols?" Before Arlen could respond, Vorthak stepped forward, his movements disturbingly fluid. "Oh, this gets better. Not only has the great Xylery Queen allowed her heir to be contaminated by human filth, but she's also implicated in the theft of our proprietary technology. 2 violations of interstellar law in one delightful package." The situation escalated rapidly as both sides raised their weapons. The Xylery warriors' plasma rifles hummed with increasing intensity, while the Crawleyan troops activated their personal energy shields with a series of sharp clicks. Between them, Arlen clutched the young prince tighter, suddenly aware that he was holding possibly the most wanted creature on the entire planet. "You know the penalty for such transgressions, Zyra," Vorthak hissed, his tail lashing behind him. "Surrender the human and the stolen technology immediately, or we shall be forced to take them by any means necessary." Queen Zyra's response was immediate and fierce. "You will not touch what is mine, Vorthak. This human saved my son's life using whatever means were available to him. By Xylery law, that makes him under my protection." The young prince chose that moment to demonstrate his developing abilities, releasing a high-pitched frequency that caused every piece of metal within range to vibrate violently. The effect was instantaneous. Both Xylery and Crawleyan equipment began malfunctioning, creating chaos as weapon systems overloaded and communication devices failed. Arlen, feeling the vibrations through the soles of his boots, shouted over the din, "Maybe we should focus on getting out of this mess before we start splitting hairs about whose fault it is." The growing crisis took a dramatic turn when the young prince, overwhelmed by the escalating conflict, released a burst of psychic energy that rippled outward in visible waves. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet, including Queen Zyra herself, who landed with an undignified thud amidst her stunned warriors. Arlen, already sitting due to the earlier vibration, found himself holding onto the squirming prince for dear life as the world around them seemed to fold in on itself. "Well, that's new," Arlen muttered, watching as the prince's normally silver exoskeleton began to shift through iridescent colors, reflecting emotions that seemed to pulse in time with the boy's rapid breathing. "Guess puberty hits differently for your species." Queen Zyra pushed herself upright, her regal composure momentarily forgotten as she stared at her son in shock. "Kalian's abilities are manifesting earlier than expected," she admitted, her mental voice tinged with both pride and concern. "This complicates matters significantly." Commander Vorthak, recovering from the psychic blast, barked orders to his troops in their guttural language. "Secure the perimeter. Disable all escape routes. The prince's emerging powers make him even more valuable, alive or otherwise." The Crawleyan forces moved with military precision, deploying containment fields that crackled with dangerous energy. The Xylery warriors responded by forming an intricate defensive pattern around their queen and the human farmer duo, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. The air between the two forces grew thick with tension, punctuated by the occasional discharge of energy weapons testing the boundaries of the opposing side's defenses. Arlen, still seated on the ground with the increasingly agitated prince, suddenly realized that his position put him directly in the center of what was rapidly becoming a battlefield. "Might want to reconsider our strategy here," he suggested, trying to maintain a calm tone despite the prince's trembling form. "Unless you're planning to fight over me while sitting cross-legged like this." Queen Zyra extended a graceful limb toward him. "Human, get up. We need to move to higher ground." Her mental command carried an urgency that brooked no argument. As they scrambled to their feet, the young prince suddenly emitted another burst of energy, this time directed specifically at the Crawleyan containment fields. The result was spectacular, like throwing water on a grease fire. The fields exploded in a shower of sparks, creating temporary chaos among the enemy ranks. "Did he just—" Arlen started, watching as several Krallian soldiers flailed about, their sensitive scales smoking from the energy backlash. "He did," Queen Zyra confirmed, her mandibles clicking in what might have been parental pride. Kalian's abilities are tied to emotional states. Fear, anger, and protectiveness are triggering his latent powers. The revelation sparked an idea in Arlen's mind. So basically, he's a living weapon that responds to feelings? That's actually kind of poetic in a terrifying sort of way. Their moment of insight was interrupted by a massive shadow passing overhead. Both factions looked up to see a colossal shape descending through the atmosphere, a Xylari battleship unlike anything Arlen had ever seen. Its hull shimmered with adaptive camouflage, making it appear as though the stars themselves were falling to Zarathia's surface. "Mother!" came a new voice, powerful and resonant, directly in everyone's minds. "I apologize for the delay. Our communications were being jammed." Queen Zyra's reaction was immediate and telling. Her rigid posture relaxed fractionally, and her antennae perked up with unmistakable relief. "Prince Consort Terex," she acknowledged, her mental voice warming noticeably. "Your timing, as always, is impeccable." Arlen watched in fascination as another towering Xylari figure emerged from the descending ship, his presence somehow different from Queen Zyra's. While the Queen radiated authority and control, this newcomer seemed to embody raw power tempered by wisdom. His exoskeleton bore intricate patterns that shifted and changed like flowing water, and his wings, larger and more developed than any Arlen had seen before, folded neatly against his back. The young prince in Arlen's arms reacted instantly to the newcomer's presence, releasing a series of excited clicks and trills that sounded remarkably like a child spotting a beloved relative. The farmer found himself looking between the three Xylari royals, suddenly understanding the complex family dynamics at play. "So let me guess," Arlen ventured, shifting his grip on the increasingly active prince. "Daddy's home." The situation took a dramatic turn as Prince Consort Terex landed gracefully between the warring factions, his mere presence causing both Xylari and Krallian forces to pause their preparations for battle. The air seemed to vibrate with his power, and even Commander Vortak took an involuntary step back, his usually confident demeanor faltering. "My apologies for the interruption," Terex's voice resonated through everyone's minds, deeper and more resonant than Queen Zyra's. "But I believe I can shed some light on recent events." He turned his multifaceted eyes toward the Krallian commander. "Vortak, you've been chasing ghosts again, haven't you?" The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Before the Krallian could respond, Terex continued, "The medical technology in question wasn't stolen from your facilities. It was part of a joint research project between our peoples, one that you conveniently forgot to document properly after our scientists withdrew from the collaboration." Queen Zyra's antennae twitched in surprise. "You knew about this?" she asked, her mental voice tinged with both admiration and mild irritation. "Of course," Terex replied, his wings rustling softly. "Though I must admit, I didn't anticipate it ending up in human hands." He turned his attention to Arlen, who was still clutching the increasingly energetic young prince. "And certainly not in such capable ones." The young prince chose that moment to demonstrate his approval of his father's arrival by launching himself across the gap, his small form moving with surprising speed and grace. Terex caught him effortlessly, their reunion triggering another wave of color changes across both their exoskeletons, a display that seemed to communicate volumes without words. Commander Vortak, sensing his advantage slipping away, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Regardless of your explanations, Terex, the fact remains that your air has been contaminated by human influence. The diplomatic implications are precisely why I'm here," Terex interrupted, his voice carrying enough authority to silence even the stubborn Krallian. "You see, Vortak, what you're witnessing isn't contamination. It's evolution." The statement caused a ripple of shock through both assembled forces. Even Queen Zyra's wings fluttered in surprise, scattering tiny rainbows of light across the battlefield. Arlen, still processing everything, found himself nodding slowly. "Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Kid's been showing some pretty interesting adaptations lately." Terex approached the human, his massive form moving with deceptive gentleness. "Tell me, farmer, what name do you go by?" "Arlen Thorn," he replied, straightening his posture despite the intimidating presence of the Xylari prince consort. Just a simple farmer, trying to make a living on this rock. Just a farmer who managed to save my son's life using forbidden technology, Terex mused, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Who taught a young Xylari prince to appreciate the value of simplicity. Who somehow convinced my notoriously proud wife to consider negotiation rather than annihilation. Queen Zyra's response was immediate and indignant. I'll have you know that I was perfectly capable of handling this situation without your interference. Indeed, Terex agreed smoothly, which is why you were moments away from starting an interstellar war over a misunderstanding, while our son experimented with his newfound abilities in the middle of a battlefield. The young prince, apparently sensing the humorous undertone of the exchange, released a series of chirps that sounded suspiciously like laughter. The sound broke the remaining tension, causing several Xylari warriors to shuffle their feet awkwardly and even eliciting a reluctant snort from Commander Vortak. Weapons down, Terex commanded, addressing both sides. Let's solve this like civilized beings rather than revert to our baser instincts. He turned back to Arlen, his expression softening. Farmer Thorn, it seems you've inadvertently become a crucial piece in a much larger puzzle. Are you ready to learn just how significant your role truly is? Before Arlen could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble, not from any natural phenomenon, but from the approach of something massive. Everyone turned toward the horizon, where the distinctive silhouette of an ancient, long-buried structure was rising from the earth, its emergence triggered by the young prince's evolving powers. The implications of this discovery would soon reveal connections between their species that none of them could have anticipated. As the ancient structure continued its ascent, shaking loose centuries of accumulated soil and vegetation, Queen Zyra's wings spread wide in astonishment. The progenitor spire, she breathed, her mental voice filled with reverence. It hasn't surfaced in over 3 millennia. Terex's reaction was more measured but equally significant. The timing is too precise to be coincidence, he observed, his wings creating gentle breezes that stirred the glowing dust particles suspended in the air. Our son's awakening abilities have triggered something ancient and profound. Inside the emerging spire, intricate patterns of light began pulsing along its crystalline surface, responding to the young prince's presence. The air crackled with energy as dormant systems awakened, revealing holographic displays that showed scenes from Zorathia's distant past. Among these images, Arlen spotted something that made his blood run cold, depictions of humans working alongside Xylari, their forms intertwined in cooperative endeavors that defied everything he believed about the planet's history. Commander Vortak's troops, despite their military discipline, began shifting uneasily as the spire's revelations unfolded. The Krallian commander himself seemed frozen in place, his scaled features unreadable as the truth of Zorathia's origins became clear. The humans who had crash-landed on this planet weren't invaders or refugees. They were descendants of a long-forgotten alliance between their ancestors and the Xylari. The young prince, sensing the significance of the moment, released another wave of psychic energy that interacted with the spire's systems. Ancient mechanisms whirred to life, projecting detailed maps of underground networks that connected various Xylari settlements with human dwellings. These passages had been sealed and forgotten, buried beneath layers of history and mistrust. Queen Zyra approached the spire, her armored limbs tracing the glowing patterns that now pulsed in sync with her son's heartbeat. All this time, she murmured, we've been living according to lies and misunderstandings. Our separation from humanity wasn't natural, it was engineered. Terex joined her, his larger form casting shadows that danced across the animated displays. The genetic markers in our son's DNA, he explained, they aren't just Xylari. They contain elements of human ancestry as well. The abilities he's developing aren't purely evolutionary. They're a reawakening of traits we'd lost through generations of isolation. Arlen, still standing near the base of the spire, felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest. The sensation intensified as the young prince reached out to him telepathically, sharing visions of a future where their species worked together once more. Through this connection, he saw possibilities that went beyond simple coexistence. Images of hybrid technology, shared knowledge, and a planetary ecosystem restored to its former glory. The Krallian forces, initially resistant to these revelations, began showing signs of internal conflict. Several of Vortak's subordinates exchanged nervous glances, their loyalty to their commander wavering as the truth of Zorathia's past became undeniable. Even Vortak himself seemed affected, his tail twitching erratically as he processed the implications of what they were witnessing. "The treaty we forced upon you," Vortak admitted grudgingly, "the one that demanded complete separation between your species and the humans, it was based on manipulated evidence. Our historians claimed mixing would weaken both races, but these records prove otherwise." Queen Zyra turned to face the Krallian commander, her posture regal yet inviting. "The choice before us is clear, Vortak. We can continue down the path of division and conflict, or we can embrace the legacy our ancestors left behind. The Spire has chosen this moment to reveal itself because our son represents the key to unlocking that potential." As if in response to her words, the Spire's central chamber opened, revealing a control nexus that pulsed with multicolored light. The young prince detached himself from Arlen's protective grasp and floated gently toward the nexus, his small form surrounded by a corona of energy that seemed to draw power from everyone present. Terex moved to stand beside his wife, their combined presence creating a protective barrier around their son and the human farmer. "What happens next will determine the fate of our world," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "Will we repeat the mistakes of the past, or will we forge a new future based on truth and cooperation?" The decision rested not just with the leaders present, but with every being who had gathered at this pivotal moment. The Xylari warriors, the Krallian troops, and even the primitive humans standing amidst beings far more advanced, all shared in the responsibility of choosing which path Zarathia would follow. As the Spire's lights intensified, bathing the assembly in its transformative glow, the weight of their collective choice pressed heavily upon them. The young prince floated before the Spire's glowing nexus, his small form radiating a serene light that seemed to pierce through the doubts and fears of everyone present. The air hummed with anticipation as Queen Zyra stepped forward, her wings spreading wide in a gesture of unity. "Let this moment be remembered," she declared, her mental voice resonating with both authority and hope. "Not as a confrontation, but as the dawn of reconciliation." Commander Vortak, visibly shaken by the revelations, lowered his weapon, a symbolic act that rippled through his troops. One by one, the Krallian soldiers deactivated their energy shields, their scaled faces reflecting a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Terex acknowledged the gesture with a slight bow of his head, his exoskeleton shimmering like liquid silver under the twin suns. Arlen, still standing near the spire, felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility settle over him. He glanced at the young prince, who now hovered between the nexus and the gathered beings, acting as a bridge between species. "So," Arlen said aloud, breaking the silence, "what happens if we choose cooperation? What does that even look like?" Terex approached him, his massive form moving with surprising gentleness. "It means embracing the legacy encoded in our very DNA," he explained. "Our ancestors thrived together because they recognized their differences as strengths rather than weaknesses. Humans brought creativity and adaptability. Xylari contributed structure and technological prowess. Together, they built wonders far greater than either could achieve alone." Queen Zyra joined them, her antennae twitching softly as she regarded Arlen with newfound respect. "You have already demonstrated the potential of such collaboration," she said. "Your care for my son, your use of salvage technology, it proves that cooperation is not just possible but natural." The young prince, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, released a joyful cascade of clicks and whistles, his colors shifting rapidly through shades of gold and green. The sound seemed to resonate within the spire itself, causing its holographic displays to flare brightly. Images of harmonious coexistence filled the air, scenes of humans and Xylari working side by side, building cities that blended organic and synthetic elements seamlessly. Commander Vortak, after a long pause, finally spoke. "If what you say is true," he began, his rasping voice carrying a hint of vulnerability, "then perhaps it is time for the Krallian Empire to reconsider its stance on interspecies relations. These revelations challenge everything we believed about strength and progress." As the tension eased further, the spire responded by projecting a map of Zarathia's underground network onto the sky itself. The glowing lines revealed countless hidden pathways connecting human settlements with Xylari enclaves, all waiting to be reopened. It was as though the planet itself were urging its inhabitants to rediscover their shared history. "Then let us begin anew," Queen Zyra announced, raising her limbs toward the heavens. "Let this day mark the end of division and the start of unity. We will restore these ancient connections, rebuild what was lost, and create something stronger than before. Inspired by her words, Arlen stepped forward, holding up the crude blanket he'd used to wrap the young prince during his recovery. "I may not be much," he admitted, "but I can offer what I know, how to make do with what you've got, how to find value in things others might throw away. Maybe that's something worth sharing too." His simple statement drew laughter from the assembled crowd, easing the last remnants of tension. Even the stoic Crawleyan soldiers cracked faint smiles beneath their helmets. The young prince, delighted by the mood shift, darted around the group, leaving trails of sparkling light in his wake. With the decision made, the spire's mechanisms activated fully, flooding the area with warm, golden light. Its systems interfaced with the primitive tools Arlen had used to heal the prince, integrating them into a new hybrid device that pulsed with combined human ingenuity and xylary precision. This fusion symbolized the path forward, a blend of old and new, simple and complex, human and alien. In the weeks that followed, the transformation spread across Zorathia like wildfire. Humans and xylary worked together to clear the long-buried tunnels, uncovering treasures of their shared past. The Crawleyans, initially skeptical, found themselves drawn into the effort when they realized the benefits of cooperation extended beyond mere ideology. Crop yields increased thanks to combined agricultural techniques, and previously uninhabitable regions became fertile ground for settlement. For Arlen, life changed dramatically but happily. No longer just a farmer, he became a mediator of sorts, using his practical knowledge to bridge gaps between species. His farmstead expanded into a bustling hub of innovation, where humans and xylary collaborated on projects ranging from sustainable energy solutions to artistic endeavors. Queen Zyra and Prince Consort Terex frequently visited, their bond with Arlen growing stronger as they witnessed the positive impact of their decision. The young prince, now thriving under dual influences, developed abilities that neither species had seen before, abilities that promised to unlock even greater potential for Zorathia's future. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the fields in hues of amber and rose, Arlen stood beside the royal family, watching as bioluminescent crops swayed gently in the breeze. "You know," he said with a grin, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be hanging out with space royalty and changing the fate of an entire planet, I'd have laughed in their face." Queen Zyra clicked her mandibles in amusement. "And yet here you are, proving that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places." "And people call us the evolved species," Terex added, earning a playful nudge from his wife. The young prince chirped happily, wrapping himself around Arlen's shoulders once more. As the stars emerged above, twinkling against the deepening twilight, it was clear that Zorathia had entered a new era, one defined not by fear or separation, but by unity and hope. Far above the planet, the spire continued to glow softly, its light a beacon of what could be achieved when beings chose understanding over conflict. And on the surface, amidst fields that shimmered with promise, three unlikely allies stood together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, not as queen, consort, and farmer, but as equals bound by trust, purpose, and the shared dream of a brighter tomorrow.